Southeast Asia is a market that's really taking off, and I think is experiencing growth overall in a lot of different sectors. And these are the markets within my own organization we're really focusing on for the next couple of years.
Hello and welcome to the weekly test community update. My name's Tim Burnett. I hope you're all safe and well. It's a very big week for the testing world. This week we'll have had the e-assessments association's conference in London. I hope you've all had an amazing conference. We're going to bring you more highlights from that over the coming weeks. But this week we're going to be talking about Asia, we're going to be talking about testing, and we're going to be talking about ATP Asia, the conference that's coming up. So I was in conversation with Krista. That's just a short clip for you there. I'm going to have more of a clip for you to learn about testing in China, Singapore, Japan, etc., and just what's going on within that space in the industry and the state of play within Asia. Some highlights, some notices for you. So as ever, go to the Test Community Network website if you want to learn more about the Test Community Network and see the podcast, the events, and the marketplace that's available on there. Also, if you're looking to submit for for conferences, then we've got the EATP conference in Berlin, which submissions close on the 23rd of June. So make sure you get yourself in for that. And we had last week a webinar with myself, Graham Hudson, Adesh from Excelsoft, and Steve Connolly from AQA. And we talked about AI and assessment from a leadership position, things that organizations need to be doing to get themselves prepared and ready for implementing AI within their examinations. And here's a clip for you. It's a slightly longer clip from that webinar, and I'll share with you more information about where you can watch the full clip. So here we go.
And I think they all have a similar pattern in a way, and probably I'd give this answer irrespective of the content or the context, if you like. So I'm a great believer in reading the business gurus. So you all know that Stephen Covey quote, "Start with the end in mind." And I think that's true here. You know, what's the outcome that you want to achieve? You know, why are you doing this exercise? And what are the benefits that you want to derive from it? And just being clear about that at the start. And
why your learners and test takers, now thereby putting your brand at risk. A second approach, that has worked well for us is to do it in a subtle, incremental way by bringing in small little improvements using AI at various stages in your learning and assessment life cycle. So what we did was we created a suite of services and solutions that focus on the application of AI, to bring about subtle, incremental but very effective improvements to the overall learning and assessment processes.
Learning, assisting teachers, democratizing access to services that help students identify their misconceptions, tackle those misconceptions, improve their learning, and do it in the absence of a teacher, i.e. those people who can't either afford to have that or live in societies where teachers are scarce. And I'd put the UK in that bucket for some subjects. Then we're beginning to really start to realize the potential of all of this.
So some excellent advice and excellent information there for you. So if you are interested in implementing AI within your assessment program and you want to kind of hear from the experts as to how you can safely do that, where the best areas of interest and potential are for AI in there, then I do recommend you watch that webinar. Now, on to the main highlight from today. So we're talking about Asia, talking about Asia ATP. I got together with Krista Pederson, who's organising the conference out in Asia. Krista's based out there. It was a couple of weeks ago we had this conversation, so it was before my trip to New Zealand. But here's myself and Krista in conversation. So Krista, thank you very much for joining me. We're going to talk about Asia ATP. How are you? And whereabouts are you in the world?
Thanks, Tim. I am here in mainland China. I'm actually was previously based in Shanghai, Beijing, and during the pandemic, we moved to Yunnan. So I'm actually nearby Southeast Asia here, but I can travel pretty much anywhere very quickly.
Excellent. And you've just been on a trip yourself, haven't you? So, and I was just explaining to you, I'm coming through Shanghai very soon as part of my kind of trip to New Zealand. So it's an amazing part of the world, and I really wish I could stop off there on the way. How long have you been based there?
That's a great question. I've been based off and on in China for the past almost 15 years. So I've had Been, like I mentioned before, was in Beijing, in Shanghai, working for a while, and back in Beijing again. And then, of course, the pandemic kind of upended everything. But yeah, it's a really dynamic market here, and I just love the energy here in China, but really across the region, you get similar feeling of energy.
Excellent, excellent. So tell me about Asia ATP then. When it's in Bangkok in November, isn't it? And the call for papers are open at the moment. When do they close?
That's a great question. So yes, this is actually going to be our third conference here in APAC. However, in between the first and second conference, we had about a 9 or 10 year hiatus. And so last year we were so pleased to announce the conference in Hainan, and this year it's going to be in Bangkok. But yes, we are welcoming papers here. We want to hear from anyone who is really interested in the testing industry here in APAC and even across the globe. And so the call for papers to be able to present is open through the end of July. So we'd really encourage you. It's mid-May right now. If you have any ideas for presentations, we'd really welcome those applications.
Okay, what kind of content are you expecting? Based on last year, building on the experience from last year, what kind of things are you looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. We are looking for content related to testing and education in specifically the Asia Pacific markets. And that's anywhere from mainland China to New Zealand, anything in between is what really we're looking at. And again, if you have things related to both testing, related to education or any of the peripheral industries, all of those types of papers are welcome. But we really want to hear your expertise on what's going on in your market with regards to testing and with regards to the educational industry.
Okay, and tell me about the conference itself then. So it's 2 days. What kind of delegates come along to this particular conference? Is it mainly people from the kind of Asia region, or do you draw people in from internationally? And what kind of things are they looking for?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. As you know, there are a lot of people in Asia. So our focus and target market is really within the region. However, we are welcoming different delegations across the globe. I think we have a few people who are joining from the Middle East, from Africa, from Europe, and of course the US as well. But really our keynote speakers, we're sourcing them from within the region, and we have a lot of experts going on across the different markets. But we have participants from various governments across the region who are really interested in increasing their knowledge about the testing and education industries. We have experts from test publishers, psychometricians, people who are developing test items, things like that. So from the more technical side, and we have a lot of practitioners who are actually applying the tests and organizations who are implementing testing and educational solutions. So we really have quite a varied and interesting audience to share their expertise on testing and education here in APAC.
Excellent, excellent. So it sounds really good. I really would like to be able to get out there. Hopefully I'll be able to get out there.
We would love you to join us. That would be fun.
I would love to. Yeah, I'd love to be back in, to actually stop a little bit longer than my kind of 6-hour stopover that I'll have in Shanghai this week. So in terms of the kind of region then, if let's say you're successful in China, you go out and you kind of crack the Chinese market, does that necessarily mean that you're going to be successful in Japan or Malaysia or anywhere else? Is it the same kind of model that you can transfer around, or is there kind of differences between the two?
I think this is an assumption that a lot of people make, is that, Asia is very similar. There's different Asian values, things like that. What we have found, or I shouldn't say we have found, it should be intuitive, and like people who live in Asia absolutely know that the markets here are very diverse. So you shouldn't expect to, doing business in China and then automatically succeed in some other markets. We know that the ways that, even from a structural perspective, the ways that you set up your organization is very different across many of these markets. And so that's just the basics, but even how people do business, how you go about testing is quite unique in all of these different markets. And so really the benefit of getting all of the experts across different markets together at a conference like this is to learn from all of the different nuances in the different markets that we're in. And we do have a lot of different markets that are going to be represented. We actually, of course, mainland China is a huge market that is going to be sending quite a few delegates. We have practitioners and test publishers from South Korea, from Japan, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia is another one. We also have a strong presence from Australia and even a few from New Zealand that will be represented, and probably more markets that I have failed to mention as well. So each of these markets that I've mentioned are quite unique in what their offering are. And not only that, but we have people, again, from the education industry, and we also have broad and varied interest across testing. So educational testing, mass testing. Of course, I represent a personality assessment. So we have psychometrics that are going to be represented, early education testing, a lot of different areas, which I think are quite diverse even within one market. And then across different markets, it's just, it's massive. And so I think it's really important that we have a conference like this to be able to share best practices for translations, best practices for implementing some of these testing procedures, and also across the education industry, a lot of different experts sharing their knowledge. So it's really an exciting opportunity.
And what's the kind of diversity of the kind of the digital situation there then? Is it, is everywhere kind of quite digital savvy now? Is there kind of differences in that? Because I understand with Japan, even though it's very digital based culture, they're very, the paper-based testing still probably is quite one of the prominent means of delivery. They are a little bit nervous about, maybe not nervous, but they've not embraced that technological side of this. Yeah, cautious. So is there differences then? We'll come back to that in a second, just to hear a bit more about the wider market. I just want to tell you quickly about the marketplace on the Test Community Network website. What I've done, because it is the E-Assessment Association Conference Week, I've pinned in the organizations which are exhibiting at the conference. So if you're looking for some of the most kind of pivotal and most important and most top of the range platforms and services that are out there to do with e-assessment, then obviously the E-Assessment Association Conference is the place to go, and exhibitors will be there, and it's worth you checking out this list here. So go to the Test Community Network, go to the marketplace, and you will see the exhibitors that are featuring at the E-Assessment Association Conference. Back to the second part in this wider view of China and Asia from Krista. Side of this, cautious. Is there differences then?
Absolutely, there's a lot of differences, and it's differences even within what type of testing you do. But that's one of the surprising things. A lot of people feel that Asia is the future, and a lot of different, especially with regards to technology. And that is very true in many markets and the way that technology is being applied. But at the same time, there are a lot of markets that are very reluctant to go digital in their assessment. We actually had a session talking about this last year at the conference, but I think it's something that's worthwhile revisiting again, as well as just the differences in maturity of the market and where they're going. So at the conference, we actually have panels that we put together for specific regions. So like we have a China SIG, we also have a like Japan SIG, Korea SIG, Southeast Asia SIG that focuses on specific topics in each market that we're working across. But we have cross panels as well that talks about like the differences between working in Southeast Asia, including markets like Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, versus working in mainland China. I suddenly realized I forgot to mention like Singapore and Hong Kong as different markets.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, and well, Singapore, I know they've made some quite big steps towards the use of technology and assessment and some assessment practice. Is there?
What's really interesting, sorry, just to add to that, what's really interesting is with the pandemic, we saw a lot of governments and organizations really go digital. And then once the pandemic kind of ended, some pulled back from that. We expected, just to keep going forward into the future, but some have pulled back. And again, I think they're really concerned about, especially with proxy testing and things like that, making sure that people are, test security and all of these things. But it's definitely something that we address at the conference as well. And the experts are there to talk about how you can still go digital and remain safe and continue on that momentum that happened during the pandemic.
And it's interesting. So what we're seeing in some places is that they're thinking, okay, GBT's come along, those kind of things. Technology's changed how we do this. You can take two approaches to that. You can either go keep going down that super secure route and adding more layers and layers and layers of security, or you can kind of almost acknowledge that, the way we work and how we're going to be steered by technology is changing as well. Which kind of direction are areas within Asia going in that? Are they kind of moving towards maybe more open book kind of performance-based testing or anything like that, or are they going down that security route, or is it a different picture all around?
I think this is where we have both and this is why it's really important to look at what type of testing and in which market, because I do think concerns about security on many different levels have increased, and especially with regards to a lot of the data, personal data security and things like that. Laws and legislation have absolutely increased over the past decade. Even over the past 5 years. In other ways, the willingness to go digital, I think, is there. And even I think there was a survey that said within mainland China, about 70% of people were really optimistic about generative AI and using it across to help people have better lives. So I think there is the interest in applying technology. I think that it depends on the market. It depends on the maturity of the market. And also, I think it will take some time. So like you mentioned, there's certain markets like Japan that tends to be a lot more cautious in how they implement. And there's other markets like Singapore where they're really, it's a lot smaller and a lot more agile. And so they're willing to go and try it out. And if it doesn't work, they can easily pivot. Whereas, other markets like China, which is just incredible, they also tend to be a bit more structured in how they apply things. And it does take a little bit more time. So
it's interesting too, because people always look at countries like New Zealand and Finland and places like that, and they kind of hold them as being pinnacles of best practice in assessment. But I was one of the guests from earlier this week, Stuart Martin. He was saying that it's a lot more nimble as a country. They don't have as many of the kind of structures to deal with, and the scale isn't so much of an issue. So sometimes they can be a bit different about their approach things. One last question for you. And in terms of the region, is there a particular country or kind of area which is you're seeing sudden growth? Is there somewhere that you're saying has suddenly turned around? Because I imagine Vietnam or something like that to be one that when I went in 2009, it was quite tech kind of light in some ways, but I understand it's kind of growing. Is that a hot area, or is there another kind of country or region that's really suddenly taken off?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think my question back to you is compared to what? Because I'm from the US and we still have people, writing out paper checks to pay for things. And now I'm living in China where we use our phone to pay for things. So I would say, across the region, there is more of an openness to apply and implement technology, and people tend to be a little bit better at implementing technology. However, again, I would say it does depend on the market, because we have Japan who's still, again, very cautious, and we have. So I hate to keep saying this question, but it's
no, it's fine. But I think what you're saying is go to the conference, and that's where you're going to find that answer, isn't it? Yeah.
We would encourage you to come to the conference to learn more about the nuances of the different markets. Yes, Southeast Asia is a market that's really taking off, and I think is experiencing growth overall in a lot of different sectors. And these are the markets within my own organization we're really focusing on for the next couple of years, because we do see high growth. So I think that's linked to technology, and it's also linked to where the testing is. But again, it's very nuanced. And so what we're doing in Vietnam is going to be slightly different than Thailand. So come to the conference, learn more from the experts. I'm, looking at this from a broader regional perspective. I manage multiple markets across APAC, but we will have government regulators there. We will have, the experts that are really homed in on what's new and exciting for the testing industry and educational industry in these specific markets. So, yes, thanks, Tim, for summarizing that.
No, I think it's a fair point to make, because, like you say, it very much depends what you're doing, where you're going, and how you're taking it, isn't it? But thank you very much. I hope I'll be able to get out to see you in November. That would be awesome if I could. I like Bangkok as well. Well, thank you very much for your time today, and we'll speak to you soon.
And again, we would submit a paper if you'd like. Open through July.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So just a reminder, that link is there for you. So that's the Asia ATP. And then what I wanted to leave you with today is the EATP 2024. So the deadline for the EATP one is slightly shorter. That's the 23rd of June. And you've got a little bit longer for the Asia ATP one because that's out in November. That's it from me. I will leave you with this and take care. And I'll see you soon. Thank you and bye-bye.